Good afternoon. I'm Dana Williamson, CEO of Smart TC. And joining me today we have Fraser Miller, our CFO, and Chris Farrar, our Chief Operating Officer. And between us we have over 50 years' experience in healthcare management, finance, technology and operations. And we're here today to ask for $2.5 million for 15% equity and 1 seat on the Smart TC board. What this investment offers is a chance to change the lives of 1.2 billion people worldwide who suffer with chronic disease on a daily basis. It's also a chance to change the unsustainable trajectory that the world economy is on towards spending $47 trillion by the year 2030. It's a predicament that the US is already experiencing, with 86% of healthcare spending in the US going towards chronic disease management. But it does not have to be like this. The solution is Smart Toilet. Smart Toilet is both a device, an analytics service, and proactive healthcare, all through a simple device that's easily installed in any home toilet and allows the user to monitor their urine output for chronic disease conditions. These indicators are sent to our proprietary predictive analytics software system, which analyses the data and transfers it to existing electronic medical records in hospitals and doctors' surgeries, as well as to the patient's smartphone, where they can see the impact of their lifestyle choices in real time and begin to understand how what they're putting in their mouth is impacting their long-term health care. The product itself can test for 4 key conditions: diabetes, liver and kidney function, and metabolic syndrome. It also has other applications for pregnancy, alcohol testing, drug testing, and fertility testing. At this stage, we have 2 elements under IP patent pending. Those elements are the flow mechanism in the device itself, as well as the proprietary analytical software. This IP is backed up by key partnerships with health services in Australia and the utility sector and universities and the Innovation Hub in Queensland. We see that there's 3 elements for benefits to be realised with Smart Toilet. At the person-centric level, we see the benefits of non-invasive health monitoring moving from the current invasive and often time-consuming and costly methods of monitoring people's pathology. We also see that it empowers people to make the right choices for their healthcare and start to curb the impact of chronic disease on our community. At a health service level, we start to see reduced costs in pathology, as well as doctor and nurses' time in managing patients who are living with chronic disease. This frees up significant time in the healthcare system and allows doctors to put their energy towards acute patient care rather than secondary disease prevention. It also improves patient outcomes at a population level, which means that we're able to reallocate scarce resources and create healthier and more sustainable communities, resulting in more productive people out in the world. And it's this world solution that we're going to talk to you next about, because Smart Toilet is not just a Queensland solution or an Australian solution, but we've designed the Smart Toilet solution for a global opportunity. And I'll hand over now to Chris to talk you through that opportunity.
Thank you, Dana, and good afternoon, everybody. The global meditech and wearable device industry is a $27 billion industry. We believe that even by capturing a small percentage of that market, Smart Toilet represents a very attractive investment opportunity. With the dual capability of having a high diagnostic potential as well as a low price point, Smart Toilet occupies a unique space in the competitor ecosystem, and we believe a distinct first mover advantage in that quadrant. But Smart Toilet isn't all about making money. This is about saving and improving the lives of people across the globe, and we believe the 3 key customer segments that we've identified will help us to achieve that aim. The first of those is the business to government sector, represented by hospital and health services. Not only will these services give us direct access to those people who will benefit the most from Smart Toilet, it will also serve as a very effective aggregator of potential customers, which will help us to scale the product quickly, as well as to prove the medical competency of the product and the credibility. This will help us leverage into the next phase of business to consumer, where we'll be targeting people who have a family history of chronic disease and want to be proactive about testing for the onset of that disease, and Smart Toilet will help them do just that. The third sector, business to business, is represented by zero tolerance industries such as mining, aviation and security, where safety is paramount and we can save the lives of many through drug and alcohol testing of the workforce. So how does it work? This device is installed by the user into their home toilet below the waterline, hygienically and conveniently. Once it's installed, you just use the toilet as you normally would. The sensor technology inside the device analyzes your urine for those 4 key conditions that we spoke about earlier. It will wirelessly transmit an electronic signal to patient information systems accessed by doctors, as well as to your smart device app, allowing you not only to analyse and view your health analytics in real time, but also giving you peace of mind that your doctor is looking at your health statistics in the background and can alert you to any concerning trends. Smart Toilet is cleansed after each flush, which means it's ready for a new test after each use. It also promises an individualised reading because of the Bluetooth pairing, which identifies the user through every use of the toilet. We have a 5-year plan consisting of 3 phases. Our first phase will be involving clinical testing.
Can I ask you, you have, I mean, again, this is like deja vu all over again, but you have both a hardware component and a software component, right? You're focusing on the IP of the software component at the moment and the differentiator. Well, how is urine currently analyzed? I mean, once a sample is collected, is there not already a software tool that analyzes it?
It's in the collection that Smart Toilet has the advantage. So currently you either have to interact with your bodily output and take it to a pathology centre to be analysed. And there they, of course, yes, have software to check for chemicals, proteins in the urine. Where Smart Toilet differs is that you don't have to have that interaction. You don't have to take a specimen.
And that part I get and I think is very good. That's your differentiation between invasive and non-invasive. But if the real differentiation is in the collection methodology, being able to turn your toilet bowl into a continuous source of urine sample, why not just integrate that with the tools that people are already using, pathology labs and everybody else, to do the analysis? Why did you have to reinvent the wheel in terms of the software analytics?
It won't be a reinvention of the wheel. It'll actually be using existing electronic patient medical record systems. So what we're doing is just taking the analysis from the home toilet into what already exists in pathology services across Australia and the investment that healthcare has already made in e-health. So the doctors won't be logging into a new system. They won't be reading some new data. It'll actually plug into that patient's existing medical record.
So you build APIs between whatever you're doing and all of these various technologies that are currently being used in order to let your samples be used in the same way that a interactively collected sample would be used.
Exactly. And in fact, the current electronic medical system in Australia doesn't easily allow that link between pathology and patient record. So we're actually enhancing the current offering that's in the market.
And just to understand more clearly, the actual process of testing that you're doing is no different from testing that's done on urine if you were to go to the hospital, or is there some innovation that you're somehow able to quickly test?
At this stage, it is standard chemical testing as you'd find in any urine test. As we advance through the Smart Toilet over the next 5 years, we're hoping to pick up advances in genomic medicine, particular proteins for cancer, which currently aren't tested through urine.
I mean, the unique thing about this that I kind of like is that it's continuous data, right? So that we can truly monitor, which is not happening in most cases. So, but I'm trying to understand more.
Yeah, I think you raise a really valid point. So it's constant monitoring, but with far less effort than the, I guess, sparse monitoring that might occur currently. So it's the best of both worlds. It allows that effortlessness.
But the technology is, this thing is called, I think it's a broad term, it's called lab ownership, right? And that is generic term. That is being called this kind of technology. And there are both OEM and ODM who already offer the configurations and co-development on this. So, and you said your analytics software, which initially I thought something unique, turns out to be also a standard version. So basically you are putting two standard technology together.
Well, no, the software will be unique to our product offering. It'll be it'll over time build an aggregate data set that we will then be able to run analytics over, which will enable us to predict conditions potentially for patients. It'll also enable them to monitor through their smart device, so you'll be able to monitor your own interaction, as well as the doctors will be then able to manage by exception. So they're not going to get every single reading every time you go to the bathroom, but if there's a reading that says, well, your glucose is spiked, they may get an alert that says, well, this patient may need some attention and may need to come in for a full or clinical test.
So basically, the unique proposition of this venture is the monitoring system, right, aspect. So no one has done this before, correct?
No, I guess traditional methods is so you test.
No, I mean as a SaaS. I think
as a SaaS,
yeah, as a SaaS.
Not to my knowledge,
okay.
no.
And you are linking with the patient's database, right? And this is exclusively being done with the Queensland Health? Exclusively?
Exclusively, as in, does Queensland Health have another provider who offers this kind of service, or is exclusively we will only work with Queensland Health?
No.
Are you able to clarify?
Do you have an exclusive contract or some sort of agreement with Queensland Health that they will not authorize any other ventures to leverage any value out of this patient's database besides your venture?
So we do have an arrangement in place with Queensland Health. We can't go into it too deep because it is commercial in confidence. Queensland Health is a government organisation. What we aim with any of our collaborations is that they get benefit out of it from an area in cost saving. So that's the benefit the hospital and health services will actually derive from Smart Toilet. There is an element of licensing, which Fraser is best to speak to. Would you like to share the licensing?
Oh yeah, so we're also able to license the data, so the technology for, I guess, other health jurisdictions where we don't currently have approvals, we can then license the technology to them, and then we'll generate a royalty revenue stream off the back of that.
But aren't these patients' data is like unethical or illegal to share or to something, you know? Like, I mean, if I work in a financial sector. So sharing just the name and the contact number is super critical thing. So now you are talking about sharing a patient's information.
Not patient's information, aggregate information at a population level. So all the information, as with any current research clinical trial, will be de-identified and aggregated at a population grouping.
For a personalised record, though, that goes from a patient to their doctor, we would use industry standard encryption technology to ensure that only that patient and that doctor have access to that individual record.
And I'm trying to understand this. Actually, it seems like you don't really have much except an interesting idea of using the toilet instead of a urine cup and using the phone as a transmission method. The collection of the data and the analyzing the data, well, we live in a big data world, right? So anybody could do that if they could collect the data. Is that correct to say that? I mean, and the next question is, if this is standard, which he asked you, is this is kind of a standard lab on a chip, then that means that anybody could come up with a similar type of solution, right?
So I guess our key sort of barrier to entry, as it were, will be our relationship with Queensland Health, and the fact that once we've integrated the software into their existing systems, it's going to be very difficult for a competitor to come along and replicate that. In addition, we've also got IP around the flow collection mechanism, and whilst the sensor technology isn't novel, it's component parts, the way we collect and analyse that urine is certainly proprietary, as well as the software.
So based upon what you said, someone can take your idea, go to China, go to Thailand, go to India, and start doing the same type of thing.
They certainly can, but they can't get a doctor to prescribe it as we currently can. So a doctor in the Queensland health system will say to someone who's got type 2 diabetes and isn't managing their condition very well, you need to use Smart Toilet. This is part of your care.
Sorry, there's an epidemic of diabetes, as an example, across Asia, in the Middle East. Absolutely, they would come up with solutions to this. So is this just a Queensland, Australia product, or what's your plan?
Well, I guess there's two parts to that question. But the initial sort of proof of concept phase will be through the Queensland government, and that will enable us to then leverage obtain the regulatory approval, which we can then roll out nationally. And Dana's probably a bit better placed to how that scales globally, so I'll let her talk to that point.
Before you do that, what regulatory approval?
This requires regulatory approval because it is a medical device.
Which part of it? The hardware part, the software analytics, both?
Every component requires, under Australian TGA rules, which is Therapeutic Goods Administration, it requires regulatory approval. Again, our partnership with Queensland Health is essential to pushing through that process. So once we get TGA approved...
Where are you in that process?
At this point in time, we've got a prototype under development, and in 3 months' time, we'll be ready to implement into the hospital system.
And what's the time frame that it takes to get approval through that process?
It depends on what the TGA asks for. So anywhere from 6 to 12 months, and it depends on the sample sizes that we're pushing through the clinical trials, which, given chronic disease, is going to be fairly significant sample sizes.
I'm not familiar with efficient government process, so it kind of worries me that your whole future of this venture relies on relationship with the government. Yep. So can you at least project or describe the value of your venture without Queensland Health?
Certainly, it's not just the Queensland government that we have a relationship with. We also have a relationship with the largest hospital and health service in Australia, which is a separate entity legal entity in of itself. And we've been spending a number of months collaborating with clinicians around the clinical information required for both the device and the software. So if inefficient government processes tie us up, we will be moving directly with the largest hospitals.
An example is here we have a hospital, Bumrungrad Hospital, one of the largest outpatient clinics in the world, sees 4,000 patients daily, and has a catchment area of large people with these types of chronic diseases. Why wouldn't you just go and do that? First of all, it's more international, and it would give us confidence that you can expand internationally. Second of all, it's no relationship to the government, so they can move much more quickly, and possibly approvals could happen more quickly here.
Certainly, our trip to Thailand has been a fact-finding mission in terms of Asian healthcare markets. A suggestion came up yesterday around and providing the product to 1 or 2 hospitals and encouraging them for free to use the product with their patients. So that's certainly a model that we're looking at.
Who else is approaching them with this type of, idea? Obviously, you've got an interesting combination of things that's interesting, but now it's out, and there's going to be the Chinese and the other competitors out there. Who else is approaching a hospital around Asia with something like this?
I guess to our knowledge, the main competitor is a full diagnostic toilet. It's a company called Toto out of Japan, and that's an actual toilet that costs several $1,000s and requires professional installation and the like. There's no one actually operating in the space that we're aware of that has a discrete device that is at a price point and offers the same level of diagnostic capability that we do.
There's no real protection at this point, so those people could exist in the next 6 months pretty quickly, right?
And they could, but the thing that's going to get them unstuck is that they still have to go through the regulatory approvals process. So whilst they may be able to develop a similar unit, it'll only ever be a consumer unit, whereas we'll have the backing of a hospital system, which then will give us credibility when we launch a consumer product.
But why, for example, has a manufacturer like Toto, who presumably must have regulatory approvals because they're manufacturing the device and their full toilet system already, why would they not pick this up and try to retrofit existing toilets themselves, given that they already have the regulatory approval for their sensors and all the other stuff?
Well, I'm not sure Toto actually has regulatory approval. I just know that they have a diagnostic toilet, and if they do, that regulatory approval is likely to be limited to Japan, and they would then have to go through the process in Australia in order to meet that market. Whereas we'll have first mover advantage, and we already have relationships in place that we're going to leverage in order to facilitate not only the clinical testing, but the regulatory approvals. So they'll provide us with access to a large sample size, which we can then otherwise speed up the process.
I can understand Toto's it's burdened with the actual toilet unit, but look around this room. we have entrepreneurial-minded young people from many different countries. Any of these people could go back and start working on this pretty quickly, and they could go and try to enter into FDA. I mean, this is not highly innovative, something that can't be copied. I'm not giving any ideas, but, you know, it's possible. So the point that I'm wondering about from an investor perspective is this just, like, maybe this is just an Australian thing and the Australian market. And you may say, no, we're going to expand globally, but in fact, it will be very difficult because very quickly there'll be competitors to this very good idea.
I think the issue there is the healthcare system is traditionally conservative. So someone may come up with a product and it may be off the shelf, but no doctor's going to prescribe that and no healthcare service is going to fund the purchase of that product. So we
Sorry, Thailand is one of the leading hubs for medical tourism. People are flying in by the plane load every single day to come to some of the most innovative and advanced medical clinics that are privately owned and are at the cutting edge of some of the new technology. So I think that you'll find that it can move very quickly.
Yeah, and to that point, they're obviously people of a higher socio-economic standing, whereas the device we're offering gives, I guess, everyone, no matter what their standing, an opportunity to avail of this technology. The unit sells for as little as $18.60 and lasts for about a year, which is affordable for anyone with any disease. Whereas flying to Thailand, maybe several thousand.
Okay, so then the next question is, you have the concept of quantitative self, right? The quantified self. People are collecting data. I have 5 years of data on my body and movements and steps and all of that. Why not just go out to the mass market? I mean, we have many different things like, many different devices out there. Why not do that?
Well, and that's part of our strategy. Our first phase is to get the government, and that's what we hope will give us added credibility over your Fitbit devices, your Garmin's, the whatnot. I mean, they do your heart rate somewhat accurately. They'll measure your steps somewhat accurately. But after 5 years, how often do you actually check how many steps you do in a day? Whereas this is going to give you a direct sort of...
I want to buy it. I'm going to buy it. I like it.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy it. If you don't provide it and it's a good, cheap thing for individuals, someone else is going to provide it, right?
Compatibility with existing hardware is obviously a key consideration. I mean, the Fitbit, Jawbone.
No, sorry. I
iPhone.
can spend $18 to put this in my toilet and log into your app and get a test that may not be perfectly FDA approved, but gets to a minimum level. Why wouldn't you just sell that? There's millions of people in America that may consider it in other developed countries.
The question is, you've segmented your market entry strategy into business to government and B2C and B2B. You know, Andrew's saying, why not go straight for B2C? Because that will obviate the need for some of the regulatory approvals, allow you to build a brand that is maybe more protectable globally. Why have you decided B2G first?
I don't think we want the short-term win. I think we want the long-term win, and I think the medical credibility that working first in the business to hospital stage will provide us with is key to our strategy.
Okay.
What we want is the scalability. You know, I understand, but what if something goes wrong in that and your relationship goes bad there, and then all of a sudden we just have a situation where, oh, geez, we just spent a year or so working on that and we didn't get there, where you could parallel go out and offer, even if you said you don't offer the full services until it's gotten FDA approved. Another company, 23andMe, is an example of genetic testing going out to the mass market. They got pulled back by the FDA, they pulled themselves down, and then they got the approvals, and then they went out. So, you know, I'm just curious, why can't we just do this? I want to make a lot of money out of this, you know?
Yeah, I agree with Andrew. I mean, I like it, I want to buy it. The problem I have, the strategy, your strategy is turning me off. It seems to be fuzzy. Clear that up for me.
So I think we do intend launching in parallel to consumers, but we feel that in order to avoid being a generic product in a mass market, we also want to get the credibility of the medical certification. That way it's going to give you the confidence that you're getting reliable data that you can then act on, and it's your health. Whereas, and obviously, our main business moving forward will be the consumer market. I mean, if you can look behind us, you'll see that the unit sales dramatically outstrip that of any other division, and after that, and it will end up accounting for about 39% of our overall sales revenue by year 5.
Oh, I think I could add to that just by saying that while I completely agree with what you're stating, 60% of all deaths worldwide can be attributed to chronic disease. So I think a public hospital system like the one we have in Australia provides sufficient scale to scale up.
If I say that I'm willing to invest in your business and provide the funding that you need, but I say that 50% of your revenue must come from the consumer market in the first year that you're working on that, are you willing to pivot and go more towards the consumer, or would that cause a problem with your current business model and plan?
No, I mean, we'd welcome any advice in that, and if you were an investor, we are looking for a strategic partner as well as an investor, and we definitely want to be leveraging your expertise if you were to invest.
Would it be fair to say that your business model might be a bit, I wouldn't say skewed, but might reflect the fact that you're from Australia, and the hospital system you have there is taxpayer money after all, whereas the people asking the questions here are asking about private hospitals. So you could potentially come away from here with a learning that there might be other ways of scaling this much, much faster. And you would probably meet a very different kind of health service provider, different kinds of people that think in a different way when you deal with only private hospitals that tend to be international, by the way.
And I have to say, since you're from Australia as well, and Thailand is in your backyard, I am somewhat surprised that the comments about the Thai healthcare system here have seemingly caught you off guard. I would have thought you'd have been all over that because of the quality of the healthcare here. It just seems like such a logical place for you to have come.
I guess to your point, I mean, to come to Thailand for healthcare isn't necessarily a cheap option. You need to have at least some sort of a capital backing behind you. So the idea of this is to cater to a more mass market, and certainly we've priced it that accordingly. That's not to say that we discount the validity of Thailand as a destination. We are limited in terms of our exposure and our funding and we have to work in our own backyard, as it were, to get this up and running. But certainly the intent is, as soon as we have the product, it's proven, we've got customers, is to start expanding internationally.
Would it also be fair to say that if you take a private hospital where people are flying in by plane every day, it wouldn't really fit your product, would it? They actually need to live close to the hospital so that the doctor they trust is the one that gets the information.
Certainly, and I think the other point to make around the jurisdictions in which we'd enter, Australia, yes, is a public healthcare system, but so is the UK and so is Canada, and they are massive markets. And to that end, we're meeting with the head of the e-health in the UK in March to talk about pushing this product into the UK. So we've got to look at comparable jurisdictions, particularly because of that link to the healthcare model. So when we're talking about doctors and training and things like that, they are the markets because they are consistent between those 3 countries. Initial markets, I should say.
Eventually, you have some big portion of the B2C market, right? So can you describe to me what is your marketing plan and how you're planning to finance it?
So after year 2, we'll be profitable as a business, and that's where we will, under our initial business plan, was when we intended to ramp up our B2C. So we'd be marketing that through leveraging the credibility we've gained through the B2B launch, B2G launch rather, and we'd be using traditional advertising channels such as your sort of TV and sports stuff, as well as partnering with retailers, which we'd be looking for the main sort of distribution aspect. So your, I don't know, Chemist Warehouse or your big supermarkets or pharmacies.
So in the B2G consumption, you probably would involve some middleman contractor to help with the installment, right?
So the unit can be self-installed, so there isn't any need for any specialist installation. You can install it yourself. However, we'd probably be looking to establish a manufacturing agreement with someone in China just to minimise the costs. And then we'd be looking, in the case of the hospitals, we'd be supplying them directly from the manufacturer.
And can you, since the software is the key, or a major key, in 1 minute, can you explain your skills in software?
So we are not software technicians. The person who's going to become the chair of our board was head of the National e-health agency in Australia, and he's bringing in the software expertise.
Relating to the software, how does your licensing for the software work? I noticed that quite a lot of the recurring revenue comes out of the software licensing. So if I'm a hospital, am I paying per patient who's got one of these? Is it per unit, per toilet bowl?
No, so the cost is a per unit basis. The hospital will have the lower end of that costing based on scale and ordering size. The software will be licensed using a SaaS model, which will cost approximately $750 per annum, and that'll be a per user license. So the number of units will be incidental.
Thank you very much. We've run out of time. Thank you, Smart Toilet Company from Queensland University of Technology.